Hailey, and I'm the host of Hailey's Comments. Hailey's Comments is a talk show about mental wellness. The purpose of this show is to open the conversation and get rid of that stigma and shame about mental illness. We are all in this together. Join us, won't you? Hello, my name is Hailey, and I'm your host for Hailey's Comments, our talk show about mental health. Over the past couple sessions, we spoke with people about their experience of having a mental illness and about the coping skills and situations that help them feel well and manage life. Today, I'm really excited to talk with Ben Webster and Chris Langer about their work in the mental health field, and especially about something called psychosocial rehabilitation. Welcome, Ben, and welcome, Chris.
Hi.
Thank you for coming to talk with me today.
Thanks for having us.
First off, in a nutshell, I just want to touch base with where you both work.
Okay, well, I'll start. My name's Ben, and I work at Island Health and Campbell River Mental Health and Substance Use, which is located downtown Campbell River. And I'm a vocational rehabilitation clinician, or the less fancy term is a job coach down there.
Job coach. I can say that easier
Yes.
than the big long one you
Sure,
said.
that's a good one.
And how about you, Chris?
All right. Well, I work at the same place, and I am the occupational therapist there.
Okay. So, Ben, what does it mean, like generally in a sentence or two, to be a job coach?
For the job coach services that we offer, or vocational rehabilitation services, basically offer supports and someone to meet with to assist a person to pursue any kind of vocational goals that they have, such as education or trying to get back into work or doing some pre-vocational kind of training programs and things like that, and to basically to assist someone with their goals around usually work, training, education, even volunteering. So.
Oh, volunteering can be part of it too.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what's, in a nutshell, it like to be an occupational therapist, Chris?
Well, what the occupational therapist does, and my role at Mental Health, is to work with people on the various goals that they bring with them. It's focused on improving their quality of life, whatever that might look for them. So generally, what I do is through interventions and meaningful activities, meaningful occupations, I look to sustain or improve the person's ability to function in whatever environment or occupation that they choose.
Okay. So, and you're both part of what's called the rehabilitation team, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that on that team, you work with something called psychosocial rehabilitation.
Yes.
PSR for short, right?
Yes.
I've been doing my research.
That's great.
I've been learning a little bit about this, and I'm hoping that my questions and your answers are going to help me and our viewers understand a little bit more about what psychosocial rehabilitation is. So let's break it down. What is rehabilitation?
Well, rehabilitation is to, sustain or improve or recover from something that is affecting your life.
Right. Okay. And what is psychosocial?
Psychosocial would be around more so like if similar, if a person had a physical injury and needed rehabilitation for that, it would be more physical rehab, whereas psychosocial is more to do with the mind than the brain, and then also the social and the functioning within a community, integrating back into the community and all the social settings, perhaps with family, friends, and networks, to basically, to rehabilitate in such a way as to become part of the community again and part of family, and to reconnect in a various ways around, again, work perhaps, or with social networks, with groups, things like that.
So sometimes when someone has a mental illness, they get like a little disconnected from that
Yeah.
or have problems in that area,
Sure,
right?
that's right. Yeah, so quite often, for example, someone may be may become isolated as a result of or as part of their mental illness, and may have lost a lot of those connections or have basically don't have a lot of those supports in the community anymore, or those pieces in order to, as part of their overall wellness, right? And so that could be a big part of what psychosocial rehab practitioners assist with, is trying to assist someone with the goals of trying to reintegrate in the community again and make some of those connections again, perhaps with their church or with their neighborhood, or with their even with things like recreation and just pieces that help build whatever their wellness picture is going to look like in their plan, right?
And so when you're working with someone about jobs, I guess like how they fit in with other people and get along with people and stuff is pretty important too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you bet. So all those things are really connected with each other, and so like a person could start with something, again, similar to exactly what Chris said, is that usually we like to ask a person what is important to you in terms of your wellness and how you'd like to proceed. And so we like to start where the person's at, and that's an important piece of PSR, is to have it person-centered, right? So what are the person's goals? What do they want to work on? And what are some steps in order to start to get on track with that and then progress through, hopefully.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
So like it's about what's important to them, not just you guys as the experts saying, here's how you should be. Wow. Right. And so is that kind of the main idea of what psychosocial rehabilitation is?
A lot of it is, yeah. It's meant to be self-directed, and there's a number of principles under PSR Canada, which is sort of what we go by, but there's also international principles as well. But certainly it includes things like self-determination and choice, and being included in things like even program evaluation, or how the programs and services are offered. Quite often people can have a lot of input on that piece as well, around saying, okay, here's what I'm looking for, and this is how I would like to see it offered as well, too, right? And so people have a lot of input that way too. So it's very empowering.
Empowering. And self-determination, you said?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that means?
Self-determination would be basically the person is kind of given the reins, right? And so it's kind of like we've talked about sometimes as driving your own bus, right? And so kind of like you said, Hailey, about having rather than maybe Chris or I kind of dictating around, okay, here's what you should be doing in order to get well. We kind of like to flip that around a little bit and say, okay, what kind of things can you do? What kind of strengths do you have? And everybody has strengths, right? And how can we build on those? And then people are then encouraged through self-determination to then use what they can do, and then build, and then sort of build some on that, right? And do that. Really, quite often people can do a lot of that on their own, with some assistance though, right? And so that's where maybe Chris and I or other rehab workers can help out. But again, it's sort of talked about with the person, obviously, around, okay, what's going to work, what's going to be helpful for you.
It's about making informed choices, so we can give people the information, so they have the ability to make informed decisions on their own, but it's their right to make a decision. And so sometimes we will work with a person that we might personally feel they might be making even the wrong choice on something, but that's also another tenet of psychosocial rehabilitation, is a person does have that right to make their own decisions, and even having a right to risk, but an informed risk. So we tell them what the potential risks might be, but it's still their decision and their right to make that. And as a psychosocial rehabilitation practitioner, we also have to really promote the feeling that there is always going to be hope for the person, that things are often cyclical. So even if someone does make a decision and things don't work out, or something happens, or they have a slip, or they something happens, that they have that ability to recover from that and to try that again. So that's
And still with your support.
still with our support, right? So we're never going to say, oh, well, we tried that before, we're not going to do that again,
Right.
Because we can't judge a person on what happened in the past for them. What we're doing
Well,
is
I
to
bet lots of people in life who don't have mental illness get to try things and have it not work out
Absolutely.
and
So
decide to try again or
we,
not.
we need to afford everyone that right to experience those things as well, and people's lives don't happen in a linear fashion, right? Like in one direction, going up, up, and up. That we're going to have those ups and downs, and so our job is to support people through the ups and downs.
And so it sounds like you also know, like, people have good days and bad days, or maybe good months and bad months, and support them to kind of pick themselves back up again and keep trying. And
Definitely.
that there's hope.
Mm-hmm.
Is that different than, like, the way that people used to do mental health?
Well, I think
Like-
the way people used to do it, again, they would take the power away from the person, and people would become almost passive participants in that system. People talk about
Right.
this old system, the medical model, where it was very focused on the disease, on the illness. It wasn't focused on that strengths-based perspective, so we could focus on their deficits and what was wrong with them and how to fix them, and that created more of that passive participant, or the person's giving over their control to a physician, to the medical community, and often people may take on that sick role, like that is
Right.
part of their identity, is being that sick person, and once you do that, you give up your control over your life. And so a part of the psychosocial rehabilitation, the themes are focused around as the person taking back control of their health, of their life, of the decisions they're making in their life. And as practitioners, we focus on the strengths-based approach. So we not only look at things, the areas that they might need some support or struggling with, but we also look at what are their strengths, what are their resources, what do they bring to the table, what are their capacities, because often those are the very things that people can use to help improve their quality of life, whatever that may be. Everyone has those innate strengths and abilities within them, and sometimes we can work with a person to help realize those strengths and abilities.
Looking at what we can do instead of what we can't do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to promote independence in whatever form that is. So for some people, independence might look very different from what our idea is. So we work with people from whatever level of independence they're able to manage, whether that's to improve or even maintain their level of independence.
Okay. Are all people with mental illness ready for this kind of approach? Like, how does it work if a person's like really, really sick at the time and not really able to think straight?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because because everyone's at a different spot. I mean, everyone's an individual, right? And so, quite often we work with other teams in our center, and so the other teams are clinical teams, right? And so each person will have a clinician who is their main contact, or it could be a case manager. And so we communicate quite regularly with clinicians and case managers around a person's I guess readiness or ability to do that, because obviously we know there's times, I agree with you, that if a person's really stressed, or they're maybe not quite well enough to start, right, or to really jump in and get into goal planning and setting, and if a person's still struggling around what kind of medications to take, or if they're having some major reactions, or their illness is really so severe that the person just is really struggling to do the basics, around getting up in the morning, for example, or getting changed, and it needs some assistance more around that side, right? And not to say that rehab can't maybe assist a little bit with some of that too, but it might be a little different than getting into more planning or looking at, say for example, moving, right? We're not going to ask someone to assist someone to move and go out on their own and find their own place to live if they're really struggling, with their illness or experiencing a lot of stress.
We can also connect people with other resources in the community that might be able to assist and support them during those times when they aren't maybe doing as well or functioning at a certain level where they can really be making a lot of big decisions. So we can support them.
So either way, it's about where they're at and what they feel able to do or not.
Yeah, definitely.
And then what kind of support is going to best help them right then and there.
And that again is another tenet of psychosocial rehabilitation, is that individualized service. So our doors are open to people from whatever functional level they're at that point, just where they are at, and that's where we're meeting with them. So if we're not able to even at that time provide appropriate level of support or service because of some of their mental health issues that might be quite severe at that time, we're going to be connecting them with other resources and working with other community resources to help best support that person and to really give them the stability they need to start to rebuild their abilities or rebuild their health or even physical health as well, right? So we work with people we can't just sort of separate the mental and physical. They're all connected with each other, and so psychosocial rehabilitation practitioners look at that. We talk about this holistic perspective, which is looking at the whole person, and that's a very important part because we'll miss things if we focus on just the physical or even some specific mental health aspects. So a part of that is looking at their culture. So we need to support and understand that by recognizing and working within a person's culture is going to be the best path to really support them on their journey in their life and their recovery, whatever that might look to them.
Right. So what does someone have to do to get to come and see you?
Well, so basically everyone, Chris, myself, and other members of our rehab team, Campbell River, I mentioned that there are other teams within our office that we work closely with, and they're clinical teams or case management team. And so what typically happens is clinicians or case managers from those teams will have, through conversation and planning with the person, will decide that, again, starting where the person's at and looking at what their needs are and their goals. If the person needs assistance with, say, housing or trying to get back into work or school, maybe needing an occupational therapy assessment, right? Then the clinician or case manager would make a referral. And that is, there's two pieces around that. There's a sort of a system that we use on the computer where a referral comes through, but quite often it's usually nice to have where there's a discussion too around, hey, I'm working with this person and they need assistance with this. What would this be something that would make a good referral? How could I put it forward so that make sure it's lined up and get the person connected with the right kind of service, right?
And a person can make even a self-referral. You can walk through our doors. It's not a difficult process. If you want some help or support, you can walk through our doors.
That's the doors of mental health.
The doors of mental health in downtown on Shoppers Road.
Yeah.
You walk through those doors. Upstairs. You walk in, you say you'd like to see someone. They'll set an appointment called an intake appointment. You meet with a person, and what they're going to do is, just get to know exactly why are you here? What is it you're looking for support or some people have immediate needs they're looking to be met. What brought you through the door, and then from there the referrals would flow to the various teams depending on what the needs and interests are of that person that walks through the door.
So once you walk through the door or the telephone or whatever, you're going to get guided and helped to figure out what you need and how to best get it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So in your particular jobs around the occupational stuff, job coaching stuff, what kind of skills might someone you work with be learning that you can help them with?
So I can talk about a couple examples of things. So one of the big pieces around what the rehab team offers are social groups, recreation groups, and we also have some vocational training programs or job training programs. And
so sorry to interrupt you, Ben. The social group and the recreation group, is that separate from the job coaching, or is that part of it?
they're well, it almost looks like a menu of different programs and different groups that are available. And so quite often people, again, fitting with the principle of offering choice and having people be self-determine what was appropriate for them and what would work. A number of groups are available, and again, there could be some discussion around and planning around, okay, this is what they involve, here's some ways that they work, here's the schedule. Quite often people have a lot of questions around, okay, where do you meet, how often, what do you do? And then, I guess one of the pieces we want to offer is just, have a range of opportunities where people can engage. And so we basically want to make it easier for people to make those changes that they want to make, right? And have supportive places and environments and people to do those things with, right? And places to do those things.
Right.
So for example, for the job coach piece of it and our job training programs, we have a number of them. One of the most exciting that's going on, has been happening for about 2.5 years now, is the Dinner Bell frozen entree program. And it's two pieces to that. It's actually a frozen food program where our customers are our clients, and they can purchase the entrees. And then also there's a vocational or job training piece of it too. So folks are actually trained and learn how to make those meals, those entrees, in a commercial kitchen environment, and so it's a supportive environment to learn all kinds of skills and the support around how to creating a routine, coming in at a certain time, having a structure, a really good structure, and then having a support person, a rehab worker, actually right on site, who can be available to assist someone if they're struggling, or if they need some not having a great day and maybe need to modify their duties, but they still can participate, right?
So there's so much more to it than just learning to cook.
Oh yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So that's one of the beauties of something like the Dinner Bell, is that there's so many other things to learn in a kitchen, right? Other than just, okay, here's a number of food ingredients, here's a recipe, let's just get to work and make food, right? And make some entrees, which are awesome. But then there's so many other pieces to the Dinner Bell that people get out of it, right? So things like how to work as a team, for example, how to communicate. A lot of communication is very, very important in a kitchen for safety, for getting the work done, and then also even just the piece around just the learning around here's maybe how I fill out a timesheet. So if I'm at a job a year from now, I'll know, okay, here's how I can fill out a timesheet. Here's how I can get paid, right? And so we have a training stipend, we call it. It's kind of like an honorarium but it's based on the similar thing. It's a training piece around, okay, person earns some income for the hours they're there, right? Similar to a real job. So people are offered a chance to try and practice a lot of things that will be quite often expected in a community job.
And then are there sometimes simpler ways too that you might help someone, like if they don't feel ready to join a program like that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So we have quite often when I meet with someone, like, as we're talking about, when I mentioned earlier about referrals, and so when people come through the door and they do their intake and they get a clinician or a case manager, and then they get referred to rehab for job coach support, then always I like to meet with the person usually in the office is what we do, and just to get to know the person, find out where they're at. I have a social work training background, and so that's kind of been part of my training, is just to meet the person where they're at and find out what brings them in, what are they hoping to do, looking at their strengths and abilities, and then also asking some things around, what do you struggle with, what kind of things do you need support around, trying to learn from a person around what they can start off with, perhaps that could be something that they could find some success in early, and then build on that in order to build some confidence, and then take on new challenges, perhaps.
Thanks, Ben. Chris, do you think it's important to focus on the little successes?
Well, of course, little successes are what build to a big success. So, we look at things like when we're living a certain way in our lives and we want to make a change. If we've lived a certain way for a very long time, we're human beings. We can't just flip a switch, like a light switch, and now we're going to change. That's not sustainable. Like, if you want to change the way you eat, for example, suddenly if you're eating, brown rice and steamed broccoli every day, that's not going to be sustainable for you. So, we look at making very small changes, small successes to build a person's self-confidence, self-concept. Often a person's sense of self or self-concept really gets affected in a negative way. If maybe they're isolating more, or someone's experienced, maybe they failed at a job, or they have a history of not following through on something, and so that can affect your self-esteem, your confidence. So what we want to do is get that just right fit for a person. So put together an intervention, or put together an activity for them, something that is going to meet them where they're at. So they're gonna have a little bit of a challenge, but they're gonna be able to be successful in that, take that home with them, and we're gonna work in a sustainable way to build on a person's success, to build more and more. So they're like stairs. So we're not gonna jump up to stair 10. We're gonna meet where the person's at. So if they're on that first stair, that's how we're going to fashion a program or some interventions around them. That's where we're gonna work with them at. And then once they start progressing more, that's something where we might start, stepping back. So it's that graduated goal setting with the person that's gonna be, sustainable for them.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So for people out there, as you can hear from what these two have been telling us, it's not threatening, it's safe, it's supported to go to mental health and get the kind of help that you need, whatever level you're at. I've learned so much today. Thank you guys for being here with us. And for you at home, thanks for your time and your interest to spend this time listening to us and learning a little bit more. If anyone out there is wanting some support, there will be phone numbers coming up in the credits. So stay tuned, and I look forward to talking to our next guest with you guys next week. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Chris.